Do you know of any big-time fantasy, I guess you would be the person that would do it, who's made the transition from fantasy football to real-life scout or anything in that, or is it two very different operations and there's no reason to compare anybody?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there are definitely people that dabble in both. You know, I know like my friend Warren Sharp. Like Warren Sharp dabbles in fantasy football, and he'll also consult for some NFL teams. So there's certainly people that that do some deep dive analytical stuff that resonates with fantasy players, but that also have a relationship with the NFL. But it's been slow. We've seen it more in like fantasy baseball. There have legit been fantasy baseball people that have then been hired to front office positions in Major League Baseball. Are
you expecting that in the NFL, yeah?
Yeah, maybe at some point. Feels like the NFL is slowly starting to come around to analytics. The analytics in football aren't great when it compared to other sports like basketball or baseball in terms of, there's still a lot of work to be done, I should say, I guess, in analytics in football. So maybe at some point, but probably not in the near future.
But aren't you guys all doing the same thing, really? Aren't you trying to evaluate talent and see how they'll do, like at the next level? Say you're not a college kid, but if you're trying to say, should I draft this rookie in my fantasy draft? You go back, watch some of his college tape, see how that translates. Is he going to be in the lineup week one? Like, aren't you guys all doing the same thing, kind of?
Somewhat. Although, I mean, listen, the example I always give is this is going to sound weird, but like Troy Aikman. Like Troy Aikman, obviously Hall of Fame NFL quarterback, was a terrible fantasy quarterback. Because he didn't throw touchdown passes. He handed off to Emmett whenever he got close.
Hey,
right?
I'm a Troy guy. Take it easy over here.
So I'm just saying, like, what we look for in fantasy football isn't necessarily always what you're looking for. Certain things you're looking for, like I mean, I think both pro scouts and fantasy scouts, we were all in on Jonathan Taylor, right? We all thought he would be very successful in the NFL and a very successful fantasy running back. So sometimes they marry each other, and you're looking for skill, but other times, there are players that aren't maybe great NFL players, but are good fantasy players just because of the situation and the offense they're in. I mean, like Blake Bortles has 2 different seasons as a top 10 fantasy quarterback in his resume,
Great
right?
player.
Because
Always behind
the Jacksonville would get down and they would just throw junk time, and he would lose. He would lose games, 45 to 28. But he'd have 4 touchdown passes. I mean, Jameis Winston last year, during his 30-interception season that caused him to become a backup, was the 5th best quarterback in fantasy last year. Jameis Winston. So what we look for sometimes doesn't relate to what, NFL scouts are looking for.